Looks like this bumblebee died right here. Oh, it's still alive. Maybe it's taking a nap. Yeah, it's taking a nap. Has something on its back though.
This year, we took a big leap of faith. We grew our operation to 200 colonies that we'll be sending to almond pollination in just a few months. But with that growth comes even bigger challenges. And today was, well, it was a wake-up call. One bee yard we hadn't checked in about a month, and when we opened it up, the bees had blown through every bit of their food. It's safe to say that they were hungry. In another yard, the mite load got so out of hand, it is almost scary. And now we're going to see if those colonies can even bounce back. Starvation and mite, two of the hardest battles in beekeeping. So the question is, can these hives pull through, or are we already too late?
Oh my gosh, there's so many mites in this, love.
Love, I asked you to treat them.
Where in the world did the summer go? I swear I blinked and woke up and now all of a sudden it is 50 degrees in the mornings. I'm wearing a jacket. Why do we live somewhere that gets cold? I have no idea. But I'm out at the mussel yard today. Ooh, there's one of the girls working the goldenrod. Oh, looks like she flew away. There you are. Looks like the goldenrod is starting to open up, which means it is go time. I was hoping that this would be our last tote of syrup. Yeah, I think we're probably gonna have to make one more trip to get another tote, unfortunately, but hey, gotta do what you gotta do to make sure the girls are well fed and up to weight. Oh yeah, we're open. So we are going through 2 yards today. Nice to have a little bit of a less of a workload. I'm used to having to try to hit all 13 in one day. Oh man. I've actually been able to catch my breath for once. It's refreshing. All we have to do now really is just feed, make sure the girls are up to weight. But in this yard in particular that we're going to look through together, I did a little bit of an experiment and that was I kept some of the old queens. So if you guys remember back in April at the hunting yard, we had some hives that came back from California that we completely split down the entire yard, and then I left the original mated queen plus 3 frames of it was like 2 frames of brood. No, it was 1 frame of brood, 2 empty frames, and 2 frames of draw, plus whatever bees went back to their little nuke for them to build up on. Well, those built up pretty fast, and that is what this entire yard is, except for 6 of the hives are those old queens that we got back from California and split down. They have been ahead of all of the rest of our hives in all of our other yards, which is why I now realize that maybe splitting early is actually a good move, because each and every one of these hives, except for 3 over here and the 3 right here, we brought out later in the season to build up. They came out here as 5-frame nukes, but the rest of these all drew out their entire box plus an extra deep. They all drew out a 3rd deep and filled it with honey, including their top box is already filled with honey. I will admit we did have a couple of them that did decide to swarm. I mean, they were old queens, but that was the experiment. I wanted to see what would happen if we actually kept some of the old queens instead of just getting rid of all of them and pinching them, because some of these queens actually had pretty good laying patterns, so I didn't really see a reason in pinching them if they're still doing well. But I know the argument is, what a lot of beekeepers say is that, yeah, they're gonna lay for about 18 months and then they'll fizzle out. So I wanted to test that myself and see what would happen inside our operation, because I kind of wonder if part of the reason why we're seeing a decline in queen quality is just because of some of the things that beekeepers' hives are coming in contact with, because our operation only sees almond pollination. Next year we're going to start doing blueberries and possibly watermelons. But so far we have only really done just honey yards and almond pollination. So I've wondered if that would make a difference on queen quality and how quickly she phases out. So I guess we will truly get to see what happens with that. That is a beautiful clover flower right there. Never seen one so pink. So this is our first time using this yard. You look at how bright and vibrant the pink is on that clover. Isn't that just beautiful? Got some goldenrod right here. We still have some purple loosestrife. I've been seeing it in the comb because it's kind of like a antifreeze type color. Oh yeah, they're working it right there. But this is our first time using this yard. And usually yards, it takes them a couple years to really kind of build up. But this yard has been absolutely phenomenal. I think we're gonna have to put a couple more pallets out here next year because it can definitely sustain it. Looks like I got a hole I still need to plug.
So this yard actually started off really strong. They drew out an entire third deep and filled it with honey, which was awesome because it gave us some extra resources to boost the weaker colonies and kind of help keep everything on the same track. Honestly, I was actually a little worried that these hives were going to swarm just because of how strong they were looking and how much honey that they had. But since this is a newer yard, I didn't quite realize that they were going to feel the dearth even harder than some of our other yards. And with their second deep packed full of capped honey, I decided not to feed them through most of August. Normally here in southern Michigan, the last 2 weeks of August is when the nectar flow really shuts down.
So I had a theory with each of these hives. So some of these hives actually had so much honey in them that I was afraid they were going to try swarming on us right before goldenrod hit. So I decided to do Formic Pro as their mite treatment. But in this yard in particular, I was washing zeros, so I only did 1 pad of Formic as like a soft mite treatment for them. Because in my theory, yes, it'll burn a little bit of brood, but in their buildup, they will consume more stores. It looks like that's exactly what happened. Looks like this one just requeened. Not seeing any brood, but I am seeing eggs. Kind of wonder because it looked a little small compared to what the rest of these are going to look like. So I wonder either it swarmed or Formic killed that old queen. Which I am noticing that across most of our yards, but hey, we had to try out the experiment. Oh yeah, we got some larvae in here. They are going to need some assistance though. They're lacking some pollen. Oh yeah, I see some queen cells up here, so at some point they did swarm. They're going to need pollen and some feed. So the experiment was to see if you can actually make do with old queens throughout the year, or if you should just replace them all. And well, I think we got our answer. Should probably go make some pollen real fast. So, when you're building out your operation and you have multiple hives, at some point you have to figure out how to manage your time. Meaning, the best way to do that is to get everything on the same schedule and the same system. That way things are more predictable and everything should be generally around the same timing as each yard. Now each yard is going to vary just because of different pollen times and stuff like that, nectar. Ooh, I'm going to get more pollen, I'm running low. are all out. So, when you have old queens in your operation, that system gets a little bit out of order. Now, there is a time and place though for old queens, because if you need to build hives fast early in the year so that you can make more splits, then perfect. As long as you plan on replacing that queen at some point. But in the case of this year, we weren't trying to make any splits later in the year because we made all of our splits early. And now we're in a predicament where they swarmed later than I would have liked, meaning they're probably going to have a smaller brood nest because now they're going to focus on, they're going to have a smaller brood nest, and on top of that they're going to cost more money because now they're going to be brooding up to hit the size that they really want all the way through the end of October and into November, meaning they're going to start consuming a lot of stores to do that. These have a set cluster size that they want to be at, and if they know they're behind, they will just keep brooding no matter what. But if they've already hit their size, because winter bees live longer, I've noticed they will stop laying earlier. Last year, our hives were in a good position, so they stopped laying in October. The queen really slowed down. But in some of these hives, I realized that's not going to be an option for them this year. They're going to keep moving forward. So it might be okay. It might be big enough by December or by February. I guess we will see. That looks like a good consistency, but yep, definitely going to have to pick up some more pollen because we are all out. And we're going to need more than this.
So you gotta think. This time of year, the bees are raising all of their winter bees, so that means that they've got to feed all of the older foragers that are still hanging around, plus all of the new bees that are being raised right now too. September is a huge month for colony growth. The hives want to be just boiling over with bees in 2 full boxes, so the queen has plenty of workers to take care of not just the brood, but also have enough foragers to bring in that last bit of nectar and pollen that they're going to see before wintertime. But the problem is, when there's not much coming in, they burn through their stores really, really fast. The only food they have is what's already in the hive, so they just devour it, and that's exactly what they did. A few weeks ago, that top box weighed a good 60 to 70 pounds, and now it's probably closer to around 30 pounds. That's how you know that they were running out. And if we were to just leave them and hope goldenrod flow was enough, the queen would eventually cut back on laying and avoid the colony starving out. They might scrape by, but the cluster going into winter would be a lot smaller, and that is a huge risk. So this time of year, I'm feeding a thick syrup. If you're mixing sugar water, it should be 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. And I like to feed at a very high velocity, meaning to feed them at a high volume all at once. If you just use quart jars, the bees really just kind of treat it like daily food, not long-term storage. So with these hives, I'm running 2 1.5 gallon feeders, so giving them 3 gallons all at once forces them to actually store it away in the comb for later.
Okay, very interesting that this hive, if you look at my markings here, okay, it says no eggs, question mark, on July 2nd, maybe emerged virgin. You also see crossed out old Q VIP. So this was an old Viplodu queen. See the BeFit logo that we put on there? This is one that we sent to California. One of them that came back, one of our Viplodu hives. And this hive, compared to the rest of them, so we have multiple different genetics in these yards right now. And I did this so that we can truly see the difference between genetics. Okay, considering this one swarmed, this box actually has some weight. Some of these boxes that I've been going into, I'm growing a little nervous because they're much lighter than I would have anticipated. This whole entire yard has not been fed because they were doing pretty good. They were pretty strong. So we didn't really see need to feed them because we didn't want to stimulate them to swarm. But I see in the dearth, some of these hives absolutely blew through their stores, while these Viplodew queens, I have a couple more right here on this pallet because this whole pallet is Viplodew. So if the rest of them are looking this way, then I know genetics is a factor when it comes to this, because that box is pretty heavy. And they got wall-to-wall brood in here. Like if you peek down in there, you can see brood right in there. Every single seam has brood, which is fantastic. Gosh, really starting to scratch my head because when I look in the hives that have Casey's breeder queen in them, I'm happy. But when I look in the hives that don't, gosh, I am freaking frustrated. They're expensive, they eat lots of stores, they seem to be sensitive. I don't know if they're just not good at foraging or what, or storing things away. I don't know.
One of the really cool things here is seeing some of the work that Casey's been doing over the last 7 years with his favorite breeder queen. He's run all kinds of stress tests on her line, one of them being how quickly the colonies burn through feed. At one point, he cut them back to just a 5/5 setup with only a couple frames of honey and absolutely no emergency feed. That year, every single hive died except for one, and that survivor is the queen he bred from the following season, expanding those genetics year after year with more stress testing. So it's pretty awesome to see that work paying off in this yard. The queens that originate from his original breeder queen, Viplodew, are actually consuming less feed, just like he's been breeding for.
Alright, so it was interesting to see in that yard just how many stores they actually went through during the dearth waiting for goldenrod. I wasn't quite expecting that. So I knew when I put on Formic that it was going to cause them to consume more stores because they were going to go through a broodless period for about 7 days. And then when they start brooding back up again, they're going to require more stores to just get everything going. But I was not anticipating them to go through as much as they did. So, alright, well, take notes and I guess remember that. But it's weird because every yard is different, because at the pumpkin yard I did the exact same thing with the Formic, and that yard is so strong that I'm not going to have to feed them at all to prep for winter. So that's how different every yard is. So we are at the pine yard. This is the yard that we did another experiment in. And that experiment was what happens if you don't mite treat them at all after they get back from California until June. Well, we did a great job of breeding mites. You would think that we had a mite farm. So I did a full dose of Formic on this yard. The last yard we were just at, I only did one single pad because, I don't remember if I said that or not, because they were washing zeros. So it's just supposed to be a soft, like, maintenance style treatment, but maybe I'll do a different soft treatment if that ever happens again. I don't know. But anyway, so this yard got a full dose of Formic, 2 pads, and I followed up with 2 rounds of oxalic acid vapor. I hit them hard. Hard. We had some mites to kill, so. Last I was out here, I did do a mite wash. I washed a couple zeros. So, I would say it worked. And now, we're just getting them all built up because they did take quite a hit in terms of the queen from all of the mite treatments, but they were going to collapse because of all the mites had we not done it anyways. So a couple of these pallets are going to be pretty weak just because we moved them out here pretty late, and the ones furthest down there are going to be really, really rocking. So guess we'll see what's going on, see if these are actually going to be salvageable.
So, if you've been following the channel for a while, then you probably know that we started out 100% treatment free. Our goal was to breed a bee that was completely resistant to mites. But we learned pretty quickly that if we wanted to actually grow our operation, that fire hose approach just wasn't going to work. Randy Oliver has pointed out that true mite resistance only shows up in maybe 1 out of 300 colonies. So you've got to run a lot of colonies before you even start finding it and breeding it down. Now, I will say, compared to some of the queens that we've shipped in, Casey's line, the one that he's been working on, really does show some resistance. We've done side-by-side comparisons, same yard, same timing, and they've handled mites a lot better. But that doesn't make them bulletproof. When you send bees west for the winter, that warmer climate means a few extra brood cycles, but that also means a few extra mite cycles as well. But still, these colonies seem easier to manage, and that is a huge step forward. The crazy thing is, the hives that we're looking at right now honestly should probably be dead with how high their mite loads were. We weren't testing this yard regularly, and I even forgot that we had left them as big colonies instead of splitting them down like the rest of our operation. But even with that, they never really showed deformed wing virus or other obvious signs. Every time we cracked them open, they've had a huge cluster just boiling over with bees. So I'm really curious to see what happens next. How big is their cluster going to be going into winter, and how are they going to look coming back from California in the spring? Because here's the thing, even with the mites, these hives still made us some honey, and we were able to make splits off of them. That is actually pretty impressive. This genetic line can take a beating and keep going, but the real test is going to be what happens this winter.
Alright guys, this is a Vipilidu daughter. Look at how beautiful this queen is.
This year, we watched hives burn through every ounce of food, and we've seen colonies pushed to the edge by mites. Yet, they're still here and they're still fighting. That resilience is what inspires me so much, because beekeeping isn't just about managing bees, it's about growth, persistence, and the belief that with every setback, there's a new step forward. So, no matter what challenges you're facing in beekeeping or in life, remember this: even when things look tough, even when the odds are stacked against you, there is always a way forward. These bees remind us that survival, growth, and even thriving are possible if we just keep going. And that is what we'll keep doing, one hive, one season, and one lesson at a time. So I'd love to hear from you. What's the toughest challenge your bees have faced this year, and how did you overcome it? Drop your stories in the comments. Let's inspire each other and learn together, because in the end, every hive tells a story of perseverance, and I hope that every one of us can carry that same spirit forward.